Hello and welcome to this week's Scriptcase webinar. My name is Jamie Oates and I am your host today. So in today's video we will be creating something that has actually been requested on many times during the live webinars, and that will be a PDF generator. Now in this case we will actually be creating a little platform which will allow us to generate PDFs, as in certifications in this case, for say studies or say exams or whatever sort of institution that provides certificates on completion. So that is the whole idea of this week's project, and we will start off with the database. So if I jump in here to the database, and I'm going to go ahead and show you all what it looks like today and the database that we will be working with. So with that I will be showing you the database that we will be working with this week, and you can see then, or check out basically the tables and the information that we will be capturing, as well as then have available for management on completion. Okay, so we have first of all at the top here our initial security tables. These would then be the default security tables created via Scriptcase for the group security. So we have here the sec_apps, sec_groups, sec_groups_apps, sec_logged, sec_settings, sec_users, and sec_users_groups. Now each of these tables are for the security. If you haven't seen them before, go ahead and generate a group security within Scriptcase, and it will automatically generate or create those tables within your database for you. And basically then they will be available for you to use or implement within your own platform. Okay, so for this specific portal or platform we have actually the defined tables here, table confirmations, where we will store all of the confirmations concerning the verification code, the URL, whether the confirmation is active, and so forth. We have also the table countries, where we have a full list of countries, and that is then related here to the country documents. So here we then specify the various documents that the various countries have, or that would typically be selected, and so forth. And then we could also indicate the type of document that has been presented by the user, in this case the student. We then also have the courses X customers. So within here we have then the customer ID, the course institution ID, and also the status ID, because of course we like to know whether the course is active or inactive basically, but we do have some alternative statuses there. We have then also the courses X institutions. So here we have the information for the courses relevant to each of the available institutions. So within this platform you will be able to basically have multiple or various institutions or colleges or whatever it may be available within the platform, and each of those can have their own certificates, their own degrees, and so forth, and that is then tracked here within this table. We then also have the table customers, and within this table we have then all of the information regarding the customer. We have the document number that has been presented, we have also the customer name, customer phone number, address, email, the country, as well as the document that has been selected, and also the user's login. Okay, and in this case we have student 1 and student 2. We have also the table diplomas. So this table is then specifically for all of the diplomas that are available, and these are then specified via the course/institute. We have then also a table for each of the institutions, and as you see we have here actually 3 institutions, 1, 2 and 3, and the phone number, address, and so forth that we could store, and then the final table, which is then actually the status. Now within this database we also have 2 views, and we have here first of all the first view, and within this view we have here the degree, the datus, the states, the description. So basically combining some of these tables that we have at the top here within one simple view, so that we can actually just capture all of that information and display it quite easily. And we have then also the same for the customers X courses. So this is again a combination of the various datas from the various tables that I had just presented. Okay, so we are going to start off within Scriptcase then and dive straight in and start to create our initial applications for this project. So I will start by creating a new project and then choose to create a blank project. Now with the project details available, we can then provide a project name. So here I will call this studies underscore certificates. Okay, and just like that we have a name for it, and we can also add an icon here if we wanted to, or a project description, as well as additional information. Now some of this information you will be able to change later on within the project creation, so you don't have to apply it all now. You can of course wait and of course just continue on with the next button. And then we have the choices of databases available. Now in the majority of cases we will always use MySQL because it's easy enough to set up locally and also easy enough for us to also show various examples. Now this doesn't mean that it is not a good database. It is in fact a very good database, and it is also one of the most commonly used databases today. So there is no problem in choosing this, and I'm going to go ahead and choose that, and that is also where I have then my database stored. Now typically on the selection of the database we would need to add all of the relevant information here. So we would have to add the host, the port address, the username and the password. Okay, we can also choose then the driver, whether that be PDO or MySQLi. That choice is up to you, and of course down to your infrastructure. So I do not require a password for my database because it's all locally managed. It's just using a WAMP setup, so there is no password for my database. It is not accessible from the online world. That is why I add no password here. So I can just go ahead and click the list database, and it will present me all of the databases that I have available. So here I have the DB diplomas, so I would choose that. I would test the connection, and the connection will be a success, and otherwise of course it will present us an error, in which case you may want to double check your username, your password, as well as some of the information you have available here. Once you're ready, just go ahead and click the next button, and from here we can go ahead and integrate as many languages as we want, or we can just stick with English. If I want to add more languages, I just need to select the add language option and then choose a language from the drop down menu, and also indicate the regional settings that I would like to have applied to that language. I can then add it and then also specify which one of those languages would then be the default language. In this case, as it is an English video, I'm just going to leave English there and continue on as if it would be a single language platform. In most cases, however, I would suggest to add multiple languages. If you believe maybe in the future you may want to add another language such as Spanish or German or French or whatever that may be, you can go ahead and do that now, and I would also recommend you to do that at the beginning of your project if you already have some idea, as it will also provide you some of the language variables for instance, the system logging that is available within Scriptcase, or the security module, or some of the other modules that are available will all then come pre-language translated, so pre-translated you could say. So then those other languages, so if I choose here French, Spanish and so forth, those languages would then also be prepared for me, which would be amazing and would also save me some time, possibly some money on translator costs and so on. And so adding that now would then be the best choice if required. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go next and create. Now I should mention before jumping on to now the themes that you can add languages at any point during your project. So you don't have to add them straight away. It's just a case of having some of those language keys for you there straight away, and that then it saves you some time and money with then those extra additions of language keys that you will need to have to add. So for our themes we have multiple choices here. Today I'm going to go ahead here with the Sweet and More. Or yes, let's pick the Sweet and More, and I will also choose this as my default theme, and then what I will do is I will remove here the SC9 Blueberry, and we're going to go with the Sweet and More today, something different. And well, it's a slightly older theme, but at the same time it does look quite nice. So let's just go with that. We have a bit of red in our life today. So to start off with our project, we have our initial project ready, and we can now start to create our initial applications so that we can of course continue on and develop the entire portal that we want to actually put together. So how far we go within this project will absolutely be down to you. I am going to go so far today. Okay, now we do have the Spanish side, and if you want to check that out, you can check out the Spanish YouTube channel for Scriptcase, and there we will have an alternative version of this setup. Okay, because I have been presented this, I am using the same database, but I will go ahead and do some of the implementations, or apply some of the implementations slightly different, and show you some alternative ways of actually applying the selects as well as some of the settings and so forth. So it may not look exactly the same. If you do watch the Spanish side, then you will probably notice it, and if you don't, do go ahead and check them out. You will always have some really great videos there, and there are sometimes some slight differences, so it is worth checking out. Okay, so to start off with, we have here our new applications, we have our project created, and of course we have within our database, so I come back to our database again, we have all of these tables here. And some of these are our default tables. For instance, we have the table status, customers, countries, and so forth. And some of these are in fact like default tables, so for basic configuration and so forth. So these are the tables and forms that we will create first of all, and we are going to do that quite quickly. Okay, so instead of using the default new application process, I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'm going to start by creating an initial folder. And so this one here would then be the setup, or well, I'll just call it config, because it's basically the initial configuration, settings, and so forth of all of the applications that we have. And then with that folder created, I have again the option to create a single application. And I don't want to do that. I actually want to go ahead and create a whole load of applications in one go. So I'm going to do that at the top here with application, and then batch applications. So this will then allow me to create multiple applications from the various database tables that we have connected to. And from that then, if I select one of these, for instance here, the table countries, I can then generate a form and a grid both at the same time. So the tables that we want here, we want first of all customers, we want the countries, we want then also here the country documents, we want also the institutions, and we also want the status. So with that, it will create us 5 forms and 5 grid applications in a matter of seconds, which of course can save us a great deal of time when we have some of those really big projects. So I'm going to go ahead now and go next. I'm going to leave the form and grid selected in each of those. In many cases, we wouldn't even use the grid. For instance, the status, let's actually deselect the grid. We don't need a grid for the status. We probably don't need a grid for the countries or the country documents. I would believe typically a form would do there, but in this case I'm going to go ahead and just go next, and then it will go ahead and generate those applications for us regardless of the actual requirements of this project. Okay, so I don't think it matters in this case. It's really just for a demonstration purposes, of course. So we have here then the selection that I have. We had their countries, the country documents, the customers, institutions, and also the status form. Now notice there's no grid here, but we do have the grid for the other applications that we had selected. Now for each of these applications, I could then go ahead and add here a description. So I could include a description for each of these. And I would, again, highly recommend adding a description for each of your applications at all times. And at the same time, do also try to add the description for your applications before you generate your final security, okay? Because then the description of the applications will also be taken from Scriptcase, and dumped into the database. And then essentially those tables will reflect the applications correctly. You will have the descriptions there beautifully. You will not have to manually apply that later. So just again to save you some time and of course a headache, because once you have 100 or so applications here, knowing exactly what they will do when some of them have very similar names can be yes, very time consuming and of course very frustrating. So to avoid that, add your descriptions and of course try and like we have here in this case, create a folder and organize your applications according to your own style. Okay, so then to the right here, you notice here that we have a type. We have here then the option for a single row, a multiple rows, editable grid, and an editable grid view. And this is then for each of the forms. So notice that each of the forms has then this option. So here for the status, here at the bottom, I will choose multiple rows. For the others, because there is a grid attached, I will leave it as a single row. And at the bottom here, I can choose to generate all source applications, so all of these applications straight away, and I can also open them all to edit. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I will also click finish, and Scriptcase will now go ahead, generate all of those applications for us, and of course give us a nice head start on any other typical development. Okay, so just like that, within a matter of seconds, we have all of the applications generated, and Scriptcase is now opening each of those for me, so that I can then also go ahead and edit the details, the settings, add some configurations, or even customize the applications entirely. That is, of course, all depending on the applications that we have. Now, in this case, the majority of these applications are basic set standard apps for basic configuration. So, for instance, we have here the form countries. So if I go ahead and run this, we have then the standard default form generated by Scriptcase, and with that we have then the add new, save, delete, the reload or refresh button, and also an exit button, the quick search, and our fields, and of course a complete navigation system so that we can navigate all of our data that we have available within our database. We can also go directly to a page or see the page number over to the right. Now, various aspects of the form are available for configuration. We can change the styling, we can change how things look, we can change the layout, and so much more. Now, a great deal of that, I should say, I will not be applying today, so I do apologize for that. But in general, I would just suggest that you check out any of our other Scriptcase videos on YouTube, of course, and there you will find many other examples and demonstrations of form configurations, setups, and so forth. So let's take a quick look at the grid countries. And here, if I run the grid, we will have then the default grid with pretty much the same setup. And notice here I have here the edit icon to the left, and that will then open the relevant form that I had just presented to you, and that is then automatically linked together because we had used the batch application process. And by doing that, we can then of course speed up our development work. So in general, for these applications that we have here, there isn't really a great deal to do. So if we run through these, we have then the country documents. And then clicking here, we have then the country ID. So we would want to adjust this here. So we have the country displayed here. The document is fine. For the grid, we will also want to display the country here. So let's jump into that one first of all. So that is here the grid country documents. And if I come here, first of all, the country ID, and I can scroll down here, and we have here the lookup settings. So if I zoom in now a little so we can see that a bit better. And we have here the lookup method, and I can select that, choose automatic. And in general, you may have to write your own select, but Scriptcase is pretty amazing, and you don't even have to do that. You can just choose here the create select button, or link, as it is presented as a link really, and that will then open here the create select box where you can then choose the table that you want to connect to. So in this case, we wanted the countries table. And we have then here the key field, which is then in the indicator, as in the ID, which is then also within both tables, which then links the two tables together. We have then also the type of field, whether it's a field or value. It is a field, we can leave that typically as it is, and then we can choose the field that we want to have displayed. So in some cases you may want to have the ID or some other field that is available. In this case we just want the country, and that is then what I will select. And as you see, the SQL select statement is just placed or dropped into the lookup settings. I do not have to code a single thing for this in this scenario, and just like that I then just add here my connection so that it is also connected to this. And if I go ahead and run the application again, we will see that we have the grid, and this time we have, instead of an ID, we have actually the country displayed. Okay, so back in Scriptcase, you could of course then go ahead and edit the field here, and edit it here within the label field, or ideally edit it here within the edit fields. Now notice the drop down box I just received there. I just clicked it away pretty quickly there. I'm very sorry about that. That is actually the save option, so I do not have the auto save enabled right now. It is actually giving me the option every time I want to move away from the page or the settings page that I am currently viewing. So here for the field configuration here, I could then go ahead and remove here the ID. I do not need this. I can also edit the field here if I wanted to, and then also make those adjustments here. So I'm just going to leave that like so. We have then the document and then the country, or we may even want to have country first and then document. And then of course we can run that again, check it out, and then we have here the country, document, and so forth. And you may want to make further adjustments to that again. So do check out the other options that we have available here within the edit fields option. So we can change here the data type if we needed to. We can add a line break. We can add a line break within the exported PDF. We can also move the positioning of the content. So if I come back here to the grid, now the country is positioned to the right, where previously it was over here to the right, and it made more sense that it was located to the right. Maybe now we would want to position it to the left, or even in the center. So that choice would of course be yours, and we have those options here as well as justified. So I would just choose left for now, and choose here also the text alignment left. So that would set the title as well as the inner text. So here the title and the inner text, and that will then position them both to the left. And if I run that grid again, that will then display me that grid like so. For this grid we do also have the details here. Now we really do not need to have this enabled here, so within the grid application and then grid modules, I can then disable here the details option. I could also disable search and the summary and the chart, as none of these options will really be needed within this application. Well, maybe the search, so let's just leave that enabled. And we do have further options here, so we can make so many customizations to the applications. And of course that is then where sometimes the time comes from, where you then customize things according to one's requirements, as well as displaying specific things as we want them. For instance, all of these options at the top here, we may not want all of these options here, and for that we can just access here the toolbar and then make adjustments to the toolbar and the available options. So we can just choose one of these, say the columns and sorting options, and then just choose here the arrow, and it will remove it here from the group. And even all of these options here, you can get rid of all of those also, and just save that and then run it again. And just like that, within the grid application, all of those buttons are gone. Those buttons and options, because they are options also. But of course in this mini grid, I don't think we really need some of those options there, so they have been removed. In some of these other applications, we had here also the country documents for the forms. So let's have a quick look at this one. So for the forms, we have initially always our orientation, we have the multiple records option, the editable grid, and also the editable grid view, which were those initial options we had presented to us for the batch creation. So that is worth checking out, and that will of course give you many different options for the types of forms that you would want to have. In this case, we are sticking with the single record. So if I go ahead and run that, we have then here the country ID that we wanted to change and display the country instead. So just as we had done previously within the grid application, we simply choose here the fields drop down here, and then we can choose the field that we want to adjust. Now we can make some of these adjustments, for instance here the data type. We can change that also here within the edit fields, and that will then update the field information that we have here within the fields folder, and also prepare the field data type for you previous to you accessing the field, which in my humble opinion makes actually a big difference. So if you do have many fields, go ahead, and if the data type is different from what you want it to be, because Scriptcase does check your field types, it does suggest a data type, as we have here. We have an integer, a text, and a select data type. In this case they are correct. In other cases you may want to change the select to a checkbox, for instance, or some other alternative option, for instance the text into a multi-line text or HTML editor, an image. So many options are available for the data types as we see here. So you can manually change them here, and that will then also change them here within the fields and prepare the field for you. Instead of you changing here the data type and then waiting a moment for it to refresh, reconfigure the application, applying that directly within edit fields for when you have multiple fields will make a big difference in your workflow. Okay, so in this case we see here the form. We already have a select here, but it is not really correct because it's not displaying what we want it to. And again, we just need to choose here the create select button, and again choose the table and the field that we want to display, choose the connection, and then we can go ahead and run that form, and just like that we will have then the country selection. Now we can make further options, further changes to that again. For instance, if I come down here, we have the option to use a title. So for when I come here and add a new country document, I have here then a blank option. Instead of choosing the country straight away, I can choose here to use a title, and then when entering, that will also present a blank drop down instead, and not force automatically a default country being Afghanistan, which of course I think in many cases will not really be needed. So in this case you add then the document, you have then the country, and that form is then pretty much ready for you. Okay, so all of these other forms that we have here, these were pretty much all the same. We can quickly run through them. We have here the form countries. Okay, so we enter here new countries if we need new countries, and we can also edit the countries that we currently have. We have here also the country documents, which we had just configured. We have then also the form customers. Now for the form customers, we would want to make some adjustments here again for the country ID, the document ID. So let's go ahead and make those slight changes here. So we have here first of all the edit fields. And as I mentioned previously, we could change options here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So I will choose here then the select for the country ID, and select also for the docx country. I'll then save that, and then I can access the fields, and the select field is ready for me, and it is a little faster and easier within the workflow. Okay, so we have here the document countries. We need to choose here the country documents. So I want to display the document type. If I wanted to add extra fields into this within the create select, I could just choose here the plus symbol, and for instance I could add the country ID to that also, and of course click the minus, and it will remove that extra field for me. So it doesn't have to be too complex, and of course it can be much simplified via the capabilities of Scriptcase. Okay, so if I go ahead and run that, we should have then our first select, which would then be the country ID. Okay, so that is then the country document. And then we also need to choose here the country. Okay, so I choose here automatic again, create the select, choose the country table, and then indicate the country field, choose that, choose the connection. And again, I will use here, use title, and I should have selected that here for docx. So I'm going to do that now. And again, I'm being asked to save my changes, so I will say OK. And then here in country docx, I had the title selected. Okay, so then we can go ahead and run that form. And if I go add new, I will have then the country and then the document correctly indicated. But now we do have one slight problem. Because the country documents are linked to the country, we want to have the correct documents displayed, available for that country when we choose the relevant country here. So that is something we want to do quickly now then. So back within Scriptcase, we then come here to our form. And within our country field, we want to link first of all the docx to the country. So we need to make a slight change here to our select. And if I go ahead and click the select again and check here the country x documents, and with that it allows me then here to check the field that I want to link the country ID to. So with that I can verify the wording or how it is spelled correctly and then indicate that within my select here. So I will cancel that out, and then after from, I want to add a where statement. So I would add where, and then country underscore ID equals country underscore ID. And notice I'm using here the curly brackets, and that is because I am tying this field from this select, which is here the country ID, and I'm tying that together here with this field country ID. So if I save that now, and then if I come back here to the country, I come back down here, I can scroll down, and then what I want to do is I want to use Ajax here for the processing. So when the field is selected, it then automatically updates the document X country field. So I'll choose on and then run. And then here, if I go add new again, I come here, choose the country, and that will then indicate the document according to the country. And of course, if there are no documents for that country, then, well, we wouldn't actually have any documents presented. Okay, so I have no idea which countries have documents now without actually checking the files. So I'm going to leave that as it is. That would then display, so in any case, it would be a case of adding documents for all these countries. Let's see if we add United States. It's actually in Spanish still, but anyway, we should there have some documents for that. But we could, of course, check that within the database table. But we do have our grids here. So if we come here into our grid country documents, run, we could then see here the countries for the documents. So we have Peru, Colombia, Dominican Republic, and Mexico. So they are the countries we would have to choose within the drop menu to actually be presented the specific types of documents that are required or typically presented within those countries. And of course that will vary from country to country, and that again is for you to add into the database. Okay, so then we have here, next up we have our customers. Let's just double check that one. Our customers is good. Okay, we could remove there the ID, so let's go ahead and do that, save that, and then here the ID will no longer be displayed. I don't think that's always needed. And then we come here to form institutions. Let's have a quick look at this one. Okay, and here we have the status as active and the country ID. And there we would also want to make some adjustments. So let's jump into that form. If I come here to the edit fields first of all, and I don't think we need the ID institution here. We have the country, we do want that. We have the active status, but that is text right now. So let's change that to, say, a checkbox or a radio, whatever you prefer. I think radio is good because then we can say yes and no, or even just have one option there. Let's wait and see. We have then also email here, so let's change that from text to email, because that will then also ensure that email addresses are entered and at the same time present us the email features. Okay, so fields. If I come here to the active field, I can scroll down, and here I will choose manual this time, and I'll say yes equals 1, and I'll say that is the default, insert, and no equals 0, and insert that also. And what I can then also do is change the columns, so there are 2 columns there, and save that. And if I go ahead and run, it will then place the yes, no next to each other like so, and we can just change that like so. And then we just still need to apply here the country. So as previous within the customers, form, we just need to update here the SQL select, countries, country, choose that, and then choose the connection, and then we can go ahead and run the application again. Okay, and just like that, we have our active status and our country for the institutions ready. And notice for the email field, we have here now also the send email button enabled there because we have specified that this is an email. Okay, so we have then also our form status. So let's go ahead and run that. And this was then the multiple records form that we had added. And here we have a special field called status color. And we have also some check boxes and everything here, so we can go ahead and edit these and update them and so forth, which we don't really need right now. So we could choose maybe one of these other options here if we wanted to. I'm going to go ahead and leave it as the multiple records because, yeah, if you want to change it, it's entirely up to you, of course, with the other view options. Okay, so our main objective here is to change here the status color. So if I make changes, I need to save them. And then viewing the status color, I can change again here the data type as I had done previously within the fields. And from here, we do have a color option. So HTML color, let's choose that, save. And if I go ahead and run that again now the field will be displayed here with a color object, and you can see then the color that is presented there. Now, in my own cases, I would more than likely add an extra box here where this color is displayed so that you can see it straight away without having to click here on the HTML color picker. Okay, but in general, you have the idea. You can see what the colors are. You can change the colors as well as the status. So we have then our grid countries. Let's just check these really quickly. Our grid countries, we can leave that as it is. In general, I would make a ton of changes there, but in this case, and for these videos, I think we're going to leave them as they are for today and continue on to the next steps. Okay, so for our customer table, we don't need to make any changes there. I think that's good. We have no country or anything there. The grid institutions. Check that one also. We have here the active status. So here we may want to make an adjustment. So here for this grid, for instance, I could come here to the events, and here I would say, for instance, active. Actually, we want to add an if statement. For instance, if, for instance, active is 1, then we display yes, and otherwise. So for that, I have loads of code snippets here and macros, and we can just also use these. Now, the macros give us shortcuts of various features within Scriptcase, and they will speed up a great deal. And the code snippets, you can add your own snippets. And as you see, I don't have any of my snippets here anymore. So shame on me, because of course that means I will have to do some hand coding. Now, typically, you would basically just add an if statement here, or if I just go ahead and add active 1. So what I'm basically doing here is targeting the field active with this here, and by doing so I'm saying the field is 1 regardless of the data, which is probably not a good thing to do, but then what we can do is we could change the color and so forth. So let's have a look at one of these macros, and why not go ahead and change the color of the status field. So we have here first of all FC field style as one of the macros, and see there's a really nice typo there for allows, but we're trying to avoid that one today. And we have also the SE field color, so color and style. So you have two types of options there that you can choose. That could then also be functional, and we also have the text style. So I will go with the field color because I do prefer the field color. I'll click that, and then clicking that will open up Scriptcase, the macros page for you, and it will take you directly to where we have that. And here we have a beautiful example of our if and how we then also change the field color. So if I grab that and then paste that here into my grid, I will change here the field to active, which is what I wanted, active, if I spell that correctly, and I'll say if it equals 1, then the field color will be X, otherwise the field color will be Y. Okay, and we do need to change here the value order because this is actually indicating the field. So if we come here to the macro page. So value order. This is actually targeting the field, and that is what we want to change. We want to change here the active field. So we take this as our value, and then we also want to target that field. So I'll just copy that here and there also, and then with that I will also already have a color applied to this field. And if I just go run, we then have the grid loaded, and we then have the color applied. Okay, and of course we can make some various other changes here, as in change the number 1 to active. So I could just change that here also, and the simplest way to do that would be to go active equals yes, and then at the bottom here we can then just go active equals no. And if I run that again, it will then update that field for me and change that to yes instead of a 1, and also give us then the color that we wanted. Okay, so that is pretty much all of our grid applications. So let's just quickly run through them again. We have here our institutions, which we just generated. That is good. We have our active status here. We have the email field. Well, I've shown you that already. I don't think I need to show you that again. Otherwise, of course, rewind a little bit and you'll see the email field there also. Okay, so we have all of our basic applications ready for our initial configuration or setup of our portal. And with that, we will then also have our initial basis ready. So we have all of our forms here. So we have 5 forms and 4 grids applications. And with those, we actually made a change here to customers. So let's just run that quickly and see what change we've made there. I think it was just a save there for the select here. Okay, so that's great. Okay, so we have then our initial folder and applications ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off creating another folder. And this folder I will call 2_courses. And create. Oh, I should have gone dash, but never mind. Okay, so for our courses, we want to generate a few applications. But I'm sorry to say that will be in the next video. So continue watching. I hope you've been enjoying so far. Of course, we've only touched basis on the very basic applications. We haven't even got to the PDFs yet, and that will be for sure within the last video. So do continue on, and we will check that out as we continue on. I will see you in part 2 of this Scriptcase video. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next video.